feel like is it episode 15? I feel like I saw episode 15.
I think we're on 13.
Oh, damn it. Okay, so I was like, oh, I had to go on YouTube and check, and I was like, oh wait, which one are we on? So
Feel like it's 13.
yeah. Welcome to Friends Let's Discuss, where Mira is not fact checking, and we are not on episode 15. We are on episode 13. Apologies. Fabian, how's your week gone, my friend?
Yeah, busy week, busy week. So yeah, we had a little pre-meeting, pre-briefing, and guys, I'll be honest with you, this week, as busy as we both have been, might have to riff. Some of what we say, some of our takes might be more opinion based than fact based, but so be it. It's like some weeks will be like that. And maybe you just get to know us better. Maybe it's just like more of our character will come out rather than the story, you know? Like, I think
And
that's
we're sort of, but you see, love, what you're doing that maybe other people don't do is we're putting a big disclaimer on this week's episode to say, listen, this week is going to be not as fact based, it's going to be opinion based. And Fabian and I will both say that opinions are not facts. So please feel free to go and fact check us at different points as well.
And what I will say, again, we spoke about this beforehand. What we'll try to do is where we do clips and when we do like visual inserts, we'll try and include whatever facts are relevant to what we're talking about. And if there aren't none, we will say we'll put some constraint like, yeah, we checked this. It's not quite right. Here's the actual numbers. But yeah, we will always try to be honest with you.
We will. Yeah. And I think one thing we wanted to touch on as well, because we were discussing this before we started, is I think it would be nice for you guys to hear. So as we are on episode 13, which is auspicious, maybe. Let's talk about why we're here, Fabs. Like, why are you doing this?
Yeah, I guess so. One of the conversations I had, it was my daughter's birthday party yesterday, right? And so we were like, the dads were talking, and I will say, like, there's a good number of dads turned up and letting the mums have the afternoon off. So, um,
Nice.
good for the local dads. Well done, local dads.
Well played.
Um, and so one of the local dads was talking about how he leads the youth church at his local church. He leads the youth congregation. And so when I told him I was doing this podcast, he was like, "Oh, let me see. I'm, really interested." And then he saw that the video we put out was like an hour 20, hour and a half, and he was like, "That's too long." And I was like, he was like, "Look, young people ain't gonna listen to hour 90." I was like, "Bro, relax. We're not trying to hit young people because we know this is not our audience. We've seen a lot in the data, so and I'm happy to share this at some point. But in the data, we're basically hitting." Peak age is aged similar to me and Mez. Unsurprisingly, people like seeing people who look like themselves. And then either side, again, unsurprisingly, those are like the next two groups. So, we're not hitting the 18s. We're not even hitting the 20s. I mean, you can guess how old we both are just from like what we talk about and where our interests lie. But people our age kind of like our content, broadly speaking. But then the other part of that is, we said at the start, we're not really interested in doing the whole polarized debate of like one side has this strong opinion on one extreme and the other person has this opinion on the other side of the spectrum and it just being like a battle of wills against the other. We are having a discussion. We want as many people to be involved in it. We know that clips, sort of your 90-second, your 60-second clips will travel well and will help us to build an audience. But ultimately, we want to get to a point where people are willing to listen to us for, 20 minutes, an hour, 90 minutes, whatever, and be long form. Because I don't know about you, Mez, like when you're just scrolling, whether it be on TikTok or whatever platform of choice you have, you're not necessarily remembering anything. You're not fully consuming. You're just hitting that dopamine button and just getting that quick little buzz. So that's kind of where we are at the moment. I don't know how you feel about this.
Yeah, spot on. I completely agree with you. We never intended this to be an income stream for us. We didn't build this to have a career. We were just really saddened and shocked at the state of what was happening in our country and the world. And we wanted to lend our voice to say, are there a community of folks out there who are feeling a little bit disillusioned, a little bit gaslit, thinking we're in a world where, right is somehow wrong, where empathy is somehow a bad thing and called woke, where genocide can't be talked about, where, you know, children dying, we can excuse as long as that they're brown and Arab. You know, like lots of these little things. Sometimes you just sit there and think, am I going crazy? And Fabian and I had always, because obviously we, as you guys know, we've been friends for a really, really long time. We've always been each other's sounding board. And then we thought, hey, listen, what about if we just put this out there? And maybe we can find that one person. We got a really interesting, really lovely comment actually on Instagram, and it made me think maybe there is something there that we can resonate. Someone can lock in and go, oh, phew, it's not just me. It's not just me. And I think that's why we do it. So yes, I'm with you, Fabian. I think my only nervousness with the 30 seconds, 60 seconds is, you know, I've mentioned it before, is just I worry that the context and the nuance is lost. And a lot of what gets put out there, because the social media algorithm likes it, is whatever is the most inflammatory part of what you're going to say. And all it does is just create more and more discord and misinformation, and people walk away thinking you're something that you're not, you know, et cetera, et cetera. And I think that's what we wanted to stay away from. That's why we're here. We're trying something different, even though it does require you to maybe download it and listen to it on your commute or while you're cooking, or maybe you're just like, I don't want to consume a book. Maybe I can figure out, or I don't even want to read the news. Maybe I can think about, let me just see what these guys feel happened this week.
Yeah, perfect. Perfect. And so yeah, that's why we call it Friends Let's Discuss. So where shall we start with our discussion?
I think we have to start, love, this week with in the UK this week, there was a very tragic case which came to light of a young man who was fatally stabbed. He was at university, he'd gone on a night out, and this other young man had essentially fatally stabbed him. What later then transpires is that when the police arrived, the other young man who was a British Sikh guy. He said that Henry Nowak, who was the victim's name, he had it was a racist incident essentially. Even though when the police arrested Henry, he was saying, I've been stabbed, they just kind of dismissed it, almost slightly ignored it, like almost derided him, actually. And the video is horrific, horrific. Now, obviously, and unfortunately, as a person of color in this country that we love, whenever something like this happens that involves a person of color, you just know what's going to happen next. And sure enough, despite Henry Novak's family saying, please do not use this incident to inflame tensions, it's got nothing to do with the Sikh religion or the Sikh people. It was this one individual who callously took our son's life, and please just allow us to grieve. Despite that, Nigel Farage, who is supposed to be a future prime ministerial candidate, decided to inflame the tension. So did the usual suspects, like the MAGA supporters, like Nick Fuentes and Elon Musk, etc., through the cesspit that is X, which then resulted in riots by the far right in Southampton. Lots of nonsense around two-tier policing, that the reason that Henry was treated so badly was because he was white. It's absolute nonsense. Like, let's just fact check for a second. So 86% of British people are ethnically white. 90.1% of police officers in this country are white. I don't understand how white people in a white country are discriminated against by white police officers. It doesn't make any sense. It's not logical. For the love of God, do some basic fact checking and apply some critical reasoning and wonder why they're trying to convince you otherwise.
100%. I It's one of the things that frustrates me, that they're trying to make it sound like as though training just totally took away any sense of like the world that they're living in. And I think the most obvious thing would be that actually what's happened is these police officers have arrived at a scene and made an assessment, maybe intuitively, but intuition based on their experience, and sort of seen that, a South Asian guy is accusing a white guy of being racist towards him. and thought, oh yeah, that's typically what we see. And so they probably then seen uh, someone on the ground who sounds like they. I mean, the recording's horrible. I can only imagine they thought maybe he was drunk on a night out and was just saying things without actually it being like what was actually going on.
But love, that is training though. That is really like even if you thought that, even if you thought he was lying, you should have checked.
100%.
Do you know what
Yeah,
I mean? Like that's what I think is so egregious about this whole thing. Like to me, those police officers acted in an um incredibly awful way. Like they did not uphold their duty as police officers, irrespective of whatever the situation, the accusations, and blah 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 blah. If somebody's saying they've been hurt, you should have checked immediately. Do you know what I mean? So to me, this is a huge training and failure of those two officers to act in accordance with their training.
I agree. The thing that I want to distinguish is there's there's training which you can complete successfully, and then there's the reality of doing the job on a day-to-day basis. And I think that that's the difference what we're seeing. Like 99% of the time, what they've seen is something that they've always seen, and so some assumptions were made, and that led to this horrific tragedy. Like this is a huge error, um, and I'm sort of tempted to sort of say this isn't a failure of the individual police officers because you are trained by your experiences and the sort of formal training that you take. You know, maybe you go to a class and do 2 hours of training, or maybe you could go away and do a week of training. I don't know what level of training they had, but that's not going to change, the day-to-day experience. And that experience is going to be more informative of how you engage with what you see on a daily basis.
But isn't that super dangerous though, love? Right? Because the thing is, in America, the reason that black people, so there's thousands of deaths of black people at the hands of police, right? And part of the problem that happens is that the perception of black people and the experience of police officers when it comes to black people is that every black person is a gangster, every black person has a gun, and therefore when a kid is holding a mobile phone, their immediate first instinct, because their perception, their biases lead you to that assumption. I actually think that the purpose of the training, and one of the things that came out of a lot of the post-mortem on George Floyd, is what they've done is they've actually reduced the amount of training that police officers receive because they're really struggling to hire and retain police officers. So they've shortened the training period. I think I'm going to disagree with you on this, love, because I actually think the challenge is here is that the point is you should have reverted back to your training, because your training, I would imagine, would have said if somebody's speaking with distress, you should check, right? You had already handcuffed him. If he's saying he's been stabbed, you're not in any danger for checking. Like, where? Can you show me where? What? Do you see what I mean? And to your point, maybe they had come across these kind of racist incidents before, and then they thought, oh, okay, yeah, all right, this guy's just lying. But the point is, your training is supposed to circumvent that. In the same way, your training is supposed to have protected, like Stephen Lawrence, etc., because you didn't just assume that the black guy, was the perpetrator and not the victim. Do you see what I mean?
I agree with the point you're making. I think the scenario that you're framing it is in a world where training works perfectly, right? And I think even the George Floyd example is right to put forward. I don't think we can view George Floyd training policing without the overall lens of systematic racism. And the reason the police officers are shooting a young black guy who's just holding a mobile phone isn't because of lack of training. It's because the training takes place, again, in a week period, 2 week period, however long. Systematic racism is every day, every waking minute, every second. You're living in a world where you're being told that young black people are dangerous, young black people are super oppressive, young black men, you can't give them a chance because it's either your life or theirs. And so there's no amount of training that can override that picture. If it's in the media, like whether you're on social media, whether it's in films, whether it's in books, whether it's just something you've been told since you were, I don't know, a child, that, hey, you got to be careful. So if there's a black guy walking behind you, cross the road or get into a shop, find somewhere safe where there's cameras and wherever. So your experience of the world is always going to override your training. That's not to say that training shouldn't exist. Do you know what I mean? That there's definitely value in training being done. Um, but I guess I'm more of a skeptic where I feel like humans will always be humans. And so until we get to the point where we say that actually we want robots policing so that we can literally program them to do exactly what they should do in every scenario, if we still want humans, there's going to be instances where they don't follow their training, they ignore the training, they respond on instinct, they just react as opposed to just doing what you would want them to do in a perfect trained way.
So do you think that two-tier policing does exist then in the UK?
No, no. So I think if anything, one look, two-tier policing is like a phrase that we've allowed to creep into our language, and it's come from America, right? This is not our phrase. You know, as British people, like we should reject the phrase two-tier policing. What I think is we can't ignore is that this is an example of police officers being so, in my view, I should say, this is an example of police officers being so used to seeing racism going in one direction, right? White man being racist to a South Asian guy, that they just assume that that's what happened. Both the South Asian guy knew that the police officers would fall for it because that's the norm, and the police officers accepted it because that's the norm. So what all I'm saying is that where something that's happened on such a regular basis, you almost relieved that like this guy sounds like he's drunk, so he's probably lying,
Oh, I see what you mean.
right?
I
So
see. Okay.
I don't think that I don't think that they believed what he was saying, right? That's clear. And I don't think it was lazy. I think they were just at that point where they've seen it so many times that he just didn't even bother to check. They were like, we'll check at some point, but we don't need to check now.
Oh,
So
I
again,
see.
I'm mindful that I'm just sort of defending the police officers in this instance. And what I'm trying to defend is they're human.
Yeah, that's fair, love. No, I do take your point. Yeah. I just think it's I do understand. And again, you're right. Like I'm not in the position that police are in, and you're right. It's always going to be a mixture of training and real life experiences. I just think it was I think this case has had so much attention on it because it is, to your point, maybe to what you're saying is, it is that sort of one instance out of 100 where it wasn't the norm. Whereas obviously on the other side, again, I hate to use sides because all of these deaths are awful. The young guy, Mohammed, who was killed by this white guy who literally just straight up went up and stabbed him for like practically no reason. That has not had the same attention from Farage and Musk and the far right goons, basically. So again, yeah, and I agree with you. There's no such thing as two-tier policing in the UK. That's just another. I was talking to Fabian about this. Like the far right love these three-letter phrases, like two-tier policing, stop the boats. I guess white replacement is technically two letters, two words. But yeah, they kind of love this stuff, but it doesn't really mean anything here. But it doesn't stop MAGA from trying to export their utter nonsense and infect our country. And I feel like, and maybe this is the next point, love, which I think is an interesting one because you and I have spoken about it before. Is at what point do we have to say on social media, enough is enough? Where is the line between freedom of speech and sort of leveraging social media for misinformation, lies, and to spread and incite violence? In the same week this happened, with Elon Musk helping to fan the flames, you also had Cenk from Young Turks and Hassan Piker, who were both refused entry to the UK on the grounds of public good. Although the only thing that people could point to in public good was that they're critics of Israel's genocide in Palestine. So again, you've got, and they're journalists, essentially, they're classified as journalists. So again, where's the line?
Yeah, I mean, I think the line is going to be drawn hopefully by us as the general public. Um, in again, it was one of the conversations the dads were talking about at the birthday party yesterday. Like the role of social media in society is something that we're all having to contend with, right? Because whilst social media is a tool, the tool's only morally determined by the person that uses it. And so, there were things that happened growing up before social media. There was the whole size zero trend, which resulted in really massive health issues for a lot of young women and even some young men as well, right? And I think that happened like pre-social media, and that clearly was a negative thing. But it was almost, um, I guess, it didn't spread as fast as it could have if it was during a social media age. And I think it's the speed of social media which is the problem. Is that we're not able to keep up with it and not able to contain it. We're not able to address things before they happened. There was the tragic story of a young man who was doing a cinnamon challenge and lost his life doing it. And this was like just this horrible challenge, and seems innocuous, seems harmless, seems like it will get you likes, and seems worthwhile on that basis. There's a temptation to sort of say, okay, we should just do what Australia's done and do like a teenage social media ban. I think we, as adults, as sort of 34-year-olds, need to take the responsibility, the societal responsibility, and teach young people as best we can, and not teach them to sort of avoid social media, but teach them how to, I guess, have their own self-esteem and not need validation from someone on the other end of a mobile phone. And I know that's probably asking for a lot. It's probably sort of being really soft and not having any clear, hard objective to push toward. But I think if we don't want a nanny state, which I don't think anybody does, then it's going to have to be on us as a society, as the people that make up the state. You know, we're going to have to make the difference and work out, what it is, where the line is. And that's not going to be easy. There's not going to be one way of doing it. Uh, so this is why we have this podcast, because we're going to have to discuss it, you know.
We are. And I don't think it's fair to say you weren't clear. I think what I pulled from that is that you're referring to, to me, there's responsibility and accountability. So as parents or aunties and uncles, we have a responsibility to teach and educate young people how to engage with social media. And we are also accountable for that, as we also need to teach them accountability for what you post, what you say, how you interact, right? Like that's going to have an impact. That's important. In the same way that like cyberbullying, love, is a real problem now. Like it's a real problem. Whereas before, you, like exactly as you're saying, pre-social media, you'd leave the school gates and you would be safe at home. Like it's like your downtime, you're away from this. Now it follows you, right? Wherever you go, because you've got your phone. I think the thing for me is, fundamentally in any democracy, freedom of speech is a right. That is a core tenet and principle of democracy. But I feel that all rights come with responsibilities. And I can't remember if this is like the uncle on Spider-Man who said this, but so I'm always really conscious when I say it, because he wasn't right. He wasn't wrong, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So all rights do, I think all rights come with responsibility. And I think when we talk about freedom of speech, particularly when we're referring to journalism, so the idea is that we used to have responsible journalism. So journalists had a standard. They had to ensure they had fact checking. They had sources, they multiple checked, they sat in line with legislation. So they weren't, like using their platform to defame people without any kind of substantive proof, etc. That kind of seems to have fallen away. And with the ease and access of social media, now anybody who has a phone connected to the internet or some device connected to the internet can create and build a platform and share their voice. And the level of responsibility and accountability, I think, has fallen away. So in this week's example with Hassan Piker and Cheng from the Young Turks, to me, people then started saying, "Oh, but you know that woman, that Garcia woman, she was banned 2 weeks ago for Tommy Robinson's march." I'm like, "Yeah, but because she lies. Everything she says is a lie. It's not the same thing. Like she is blaming like the usual kind of crusade against Muslims, and again." The irony of someone called Garcia sitting on the far right, again, I hope that's not lost on other people as it is certainly not on me. But anyway, you know, lying about Muslims taking over. Muslims, there's 6.5% of our population are Muslim. Let's not go crazy now, okay? Let's be realistic. There is no such thing as Sharia law replacing British law. You have 0 cases where Sharia law has replaced British law in any decisioning. Don't lie. So, like, all of these things are just lies versus on the other side, when you've got Cenk and Hassan Piker who are referencing United Nations, Francesca Albanese is a special rapporteur, the IC, the International Criminal Court, who have called for Netanyahu to be tried as a war criminal, who are sharing journalists covering Palestine, Médecins Sans Frontières, like all of these guys sharing independent evidence that Israel is committing genocide. That's not the same. That's not like this nonsense thing where we do both sides. That applies equality, love. Like that's not the same. You are actually censoring a group of people who are calling out atrocities and you're equivocating them on somebody on the far right just making shit up, basically.
Yeah.
That to me is dangerous in terms of where the line is.
Your point about Hassan Piker being like, a legitimate journalist and how historically journalism was, a much more I guess well-resourced and well-respected profession. It reminded me of this thing I saw about Winston Churchill. So I don't know if you know this, but he used to be a journalist before he became prime minister.
Oh,
Right.
I didn't know.
Okay, so in his early career, he was paid just £5 per article as a war correspondent, and he was covering the Cuban War of Independence. So £5 per article, and that's in 1890s. So good money, right? And then pre-World War II, so apparently his freelancing writing fees exploded. So for example, he secured £6,000, which is roughly equivalent to £350,000 today. Yeah, for an article, for a 12-part article series. So this estimate is that in the modern equivalent, he made over $1.4 million per year writing articles and books. So I think this might be why like, today's journalists are not necessarily quite as well resourced. And maybe, look, maybe Winston Churchill was a bit of an exception. I don't like. I want to sort of learn more because obviously it's one of those things that probably we should have like picked up on in our history class, but maybe just wasn't delivered in the most engaging way. But I do wonder, did he come from like some sort of aristocracy where people just wanted his opinion, and so maybe he was just being paid over the odds for it, or maybe there was some sort of level of corruption where it was just like, if we pay this guy a bunch of money, it will work out in the same way as if we pay Trump a bunch of money for a ballroom today. That sort of level of thing. I don't know, but yeah, it's just interesting that as journalists, even one who is from aristocracy could make that much money from writing articles.
Wait, but as you're talking, I'm thinking, was that Boris Johnson's playbook though?
I think so.
Right? Because he did the same thing. Like he
Yeah,
did
yeah,
exactly the same thing. He had some stupid article in the Telegraph where he chatted nonsense, and they paid him something like £1 million a year or something crazy, just for that. So yeah, I mean, and we all know how much of a fan of Churchill he was. So, uh,
exactly.
but yeah, it's an interesting one, love. Like I think at the end of the day, freedom of speech is really important in summary, but there is a responsibility that we have to take for it. That's why we have laws in place. So I think that the UK government should put curbs on platforms like X that really, particularly because Elon Musk gets so heavily involved as well as the owner, right? And you don't understand how the algorithm works. All of the checks and balances in X have been taken away. So they use, even Instagram used to have the banner. So they would say, like, please fact check this. This could be misinformation or whatever. That's all gone, obviously, after Trump came into power. Because they need those platforms to lie for them, right? Like they don't want you to know the truth, which is why they make such an effort. And the challenge is, as exactly as you hit the nail on the head last week, love, I don't think enough people are taking the time to go and independently fact check. And I don't just mean like Google and see what, Google's AI says, because you also have to really look at the source, like to one of our earlier ones where they're just picking crap up from Wikipedia. Like, look at the source of the information. I just don't think people are doing that enough, applying enough critical reasoning. Like, and it's interesting because even when you watch some of the videos that people like Paul Chowdhury have done on the recent Tommy Robinson march, what's sort of interesting to me, love, is there are pockets of people there that are reasonable, but have been told that the reason that your life is worse is because you're white. Actually, the reason that your life is worse is because you're working class.
Yeah.
That's it. That's all it is. So that's what you guys, I think that's where we don't have that class consciousness. And until we don't have that class consciousness, love, these rich buggers just keep doing what they want to do because they just want to enrich themselves.
I think it's so interesting that Paul Chowdhury will go and like interview people who attend these marches, because my assumption has always been that if you're that motivated to go to a march, go to a rally, then you must really hate the people you're protesting against and would not want to have any type of conversation with someone who looked like the opposition in this case. And the fact that they're not winning, the fact that they're not like so enraged by, the South Asian guy trying to have a conversation with them about their beliefs, it's like weird to me. I'm like, how do you get from being like, yeah, I'm definitely going to a march, but I actually don't care enough to do any research on what's being said? How do you do that? Like, that's weird mental gymnastics.
I don't get it either, love. I found the same thing. And there was one, Femi, he's another social media guy. Like he was also there, but I feel like he definitely got a bit, like, again, it's hard to tell because again, people are sharing what they want to share. Not to say that they're defame them or anything, but what I mean is to say, obviously the engagement that Femi had with the reasonable English guy who was kind of actually having a discussion and trying to understand his point, or Paul Chowdhury, blah, blah, the real hardcore racists probably wouldn't have engaged with them at all. And there were people that were coming up behind this conversation that Femi had with the guy that were really shouting abuse and stuff at him. And I actually felt quite scared for him, to be honest, because I thought he was mad to be there. But and yeah, it's a funny one. I wondered as well, like with Paul Chowdhury particularly, because a lot of people recognized him as well. He's quite a famous comedian. So again, did that kind of be, is it one of those things like my mum always used to say, I'm sure we got it as well, love. Um, you know, P word, N word, etc. Oh no, but no, not you. You're not one. We don't mean you. You're good. We don't mean not one. You're not one of them.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know what I mean? Like, you're one of us. So like,
yeah.
do you see what I mean?
Well, and it was even interesting when, we had our friend Stephanie on the show, and she was talking about the conversation you had with someone who was a reform candidate ahead of the local elections, and how they would seem genuinely passionate about what they were doing and wanting to help the local community in their own way. And so again, it's that sort of weird balance of like, these are humans on the other end of it, and often they're sort of frustrating humans. And I don't know if it's the path of least resistance, where they're just like, okay, well, I guess the easiest thing is to, blame the people coming over in small boats, blame people that don't look exactly like me, that might be the easiest thing to do. Um, yeah,
Always though, right? Because to your point, they engaged with Steph really well. This guy was like, these guys were chatting with Paul Chowdhury. He was even cracking jokes with some of the bouncers that were, manning the stage. I mean, Femi was still in the crowd. Whether he was entirely safe is probably a slightly different thing. We've had our whole lives, love. We've had not you, we don't mean you. we reached a certain level where people are able to delineate between, especially because you and I, we're born here, we're raised here, we speak the same way, same school, and about whatever. I, I don't, I don't know, but I think the thing for me, love, with all of this, and then I was really annoyed this week when I saw the Southampton riots, not least because I'm always puzzled by the right, like even the Tommy Robinson march the other day, like you're talking about our country and how you need to make it great again or whatever nonsense it is, and yet you leave destruction and mess in your wake. That's the other thing I've always found so contradictory. Like, you know, the poor cleaners were up at like 5 a.m. the next day cleaning all the mess that was left in London as a result of the march. At Southampton, people were afraid to leave their homes because these nutters came and descended to capitalize on the tragedy of this poor family that were grieving the most heinous thing. Like, it was such a horrific thing. And I think fundamentally for me, as I watch all this stuff, and it does really bum me out, because I'm always puzzled, like, how the hell do we just keep getting back here over and over again, is the thing that the rich have been able to do so brilliantly is to convince the 99% that it's a zero-sum game. So the reason you don't have enough is because an asylum seeker gets £50 a week. The reason that you don't have enough is because social housing is going to other people as well. And yet nobody's questioning why the pie itself is so much bigger for everybody else. Because if you live in a society where we have, I think it's like 250 billionaires now, where you live in a society where, like, particularly in America, like the top sort of 1% or 0.1% own more than the bottom 60%. The point is the overall pie is humongous.
Huge.
The bit that you're fighting over is your tiny slice, and they're convincing you that that tiny slice is all you have, and the rest of the 50 million of the population have to split that tiny slice because that's all there is available. And the bit that just blows my brain is, how do you believe that? How do normal people sit there and go, yeah, it's okay, he's worked hard, so he should have 50 million, but at the same time I'm going to criticize the person who's getting like £5 a week.
We got Elon Musk funding Tommy Robinson marches. The, the richest man in the world, right? And bear in mind, like, his start came from his father's emerald mine, right? Or grandfather's emerald mine. So he came from a family that owned like precious stones, like so he didn't work his way up from the ground and had nothing. Okay, so let's put that aside. Okay, he then went and bought Tesla. Didn't found Tesla. He bought it from two guys who had already started a business. Yes, made it to a successful brand, then use Tesla's stock to buy X because he doesn't want to make his money liquid because then it can be taxed. Then XAI is then bought by SpaceX. And then SpaceX is buying Tesla Cybertrucks because nobody wants the Tesla Cybertrucks. And so you've got this weird thing where this guy's just doing all of these somersaults and financial gymnastics to make his money make sense and hold the title as wealthiest man in the world. And then to cap it all off, SpaceX is going to IPO. He's managed to change the law so that all of these index funds, pension funds, have to buy a portion of his business so he can have the biggest IPO we've ever seen, making himself wealthier. And we're
How?
like, what is going on? Like,
How is that even possible? Like, how is that not corruption, love?
it is corruption.
It's corruption,
It
right? Like,
is
it's
corruption.
so bad. And it's so egregious corruption as well, because the pension funds, again, that's the other thing I think is a conspiracy. All of us have to pay into pension fund. Paying into pension fund, whether it's private or through your employer, is now a compulsory requirement in the UK. And yet the pension funds are so separate from us as individuals, we don't realize how much money our collective wealth is. The collective contribution that we are making makes pension funds so freaking powerful. So therefore, we are not really using that power because they've told us we have none, but actually we do. So like, and even like Tommy Robinson, love, by the way, just to go back to your point, so it's not just Elon Musk. He's also being supported by the state of Israel, the far right government of the state of Israel. and this is identified in the Byline Times article, and who did a source of his funding, and then also the UAE government. So for the guy that hates Muslims, he's sure as happy to take money from Muslims and spend an inordinate amount of time in Muslim countries. So like, I don't really, again, you have to educate yourself, love. Do you know what I mean? You have to ask the questions, like critically reason. It's no point just like regurgitating this stuff, because you can get reform in, as we've said many times. Your life is not going to change. It's not going to get any better. Look at what's happened in America, right? I mean, trillions of dollars has gone from the bottom to the top. Like the tax rates that Elon Musk and Bezos and Zuckerberg and all of these guys paid last year under Trump's new bill is like 7-8% or nothing, right? I think Elon Musk paid 1% in his equivalent taxes on his wealth. Are you paying 1%? Because the average American pays at least 15% as a combination of state and federal taxes. So like, how do we achieve this kind of class consciousness, love?
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, I guess the frustrating thing is, we seem to be happy to spend our time consuming content that is not at all useful, but like never taking the time to sort of just sit and do a bit of self-education. And I guess we've spoken about China a lot because I think it just makes for such a useful contrast to what's going on both in the UK and the US. But when you look at Chinese social media platforms, a lot of it is not the junk that we sort of consume over here. Like, it does look like the Chinese state is being a lot more deliberate about what is made available to the general public. Now, you know, you can argue that's both a negative and a positive. Like you're saying, this is not freedom of speech when it's controlled. And if the state is controlling the narrative, it doesn't even matter how much you say if you can only see certain things, right? But I guess the other side of that is China, or the Chinese government at least, seems to have like a 10, 20, or even 50-year plan, and it's working. Like we've spoken about the social mobility that's been experienced in China. I think you said the number, but is it 80 million people have gone from poverty to being sort of middle class?
I think it might even be higher than that, to be honest, love. But yeah, it's in the hundreds of millions, I think.
Right.
Yeah.
And so, like that alone, imagine if you could say that in the UK, that such a large percentage of people have gone from being relatively poor to relatively wealthy. Like, you would have to say, just based on those objective measures, China is doing a good job. And I think that's the boring part for a lot of us in the West, is that we've always been told that the Chinese way is the wrong way. Where unfortunately, the uncomfortable truth is we could probably learn a thing or two from them, which is not
Because it's the economic system, isn't it, love? I think that's the interesting thing, like with China, because I will always be a proponent of democracy, because I think people should be free, free from state control, free from oppression, because there's any human anything that involves humans is likely to be fallible, right? So I'm always really conscious that if you have individuals that are in charge solely, then actually that can be corrupted, because power corrupts. So like that's the only thing. But I think to me it's the economic system, love. So we can see that this neoliberal economic philosophy has failed the vast majority of people, because this whole thing with white working classes, or even now middle classes, saying, oh, it's because I'm white. No, it's not because you're white. It's because capitalism is exploiting you. That's the nature of capitalism. You are exploited for your labor, and you don't get the same back in terms of return. You did the analysis, right, with Claude. So what, 358% of productivity. So labor productivity has increased in the last, I think, like 15, 20 years. Wage productivity has increased by 122%. So that's 3x-ish, just about 3x. So they are, that 3x, that gap, they are banking that. That's why there are so many multimillionaires and billionaires. That's why the private equity companies have so much money to then buy up and screw up everything that they touch, because of that gap. And until you realize that you are being exploited for your labor. And it's really not about the poor guy coming on a boat or the brown woman or the black guy or whatever it is, until you realize that fundamentally the 99% are stuck in this crap together, nothing will change. So I genuinely implore you, because I know we get some wild comments on our page as well. I genuinely implore you, like, seriously, like, pick up a book. Honestly, I swear to God, pick up a book and read about, I don't know, look at Yanis Varoufakis's book about techno-fascism. Pick up Gabriel Zuckman. I just bought his book. He's talking about what a wealth tax would entail. So, like, the massive explosion in the billionaire class. Even write down, genuinely, you're going to think I'm making fun of you guys, but just literally write down the number 1 billion. Write down the number 1 trillion. I still get it wrong in my mind how many zeros a billion is.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, literally write it down and then write your salary, or even just take your total wealth. Like, add the value of your house up if you've got one, add your pension fund, whatever. Just write it down and compare. Is it the same? Are you in the realm of these people? Stop defending them. Start holding them to account. Please.
Yeah.
Pay their taxes.
It's I think you're so right about like the exploitation. And I think it's one of those things where it comes back to the question of what's free. Because if you're being exploited, then are you free? Like, what's free at this point? And whether or not it's like being labeled communism as it is in China, or authoritarianism, or this corrupt version of capitalism that we're experiencing, if you're stuck in it and being exploited by it, I don't know if you can say that you're free. And obviously, I guess if you wanted to pull it apart, you can say there's levels of freedom.
Not free, love. Even look at the someone was saying, this woman on one of these god awful LBC shows was like, oh, but I think she was arguing with Cenk this week, and she's saying, yeah, but oh God, nothing, of course you can criticize Israel in this country, of course you can. Well, what do you mean we're not free? And you're like, love, I'm sorry, what have you been following? Because we've got British pensioners sitting in prison right now because they dared to protest against a genocide. What are you talking about? Like, we are not free. To your point, love, not just within the capitalist state when all of our labor is exploited, not just where our I bought another book actually, which is about the asset class. So the private equity firms that are buying up, like Thames Water, for example, which was previously publicly owned. It got privatized under Margaret Thatcher. It's been an absolute shit show. So there's been more sewage, no investment, and yet £30 billion has been paid in dividends and executive salaries over the last however many years. And now it's probably going to have to go back into public ownership because it's in such a bad state. So we got private equity firms, again, just a collection of rich people that want to make more money, buying up assets, stripping the assets, and then chucking them back over the fence for the plebs to try and fix and pay for again. When the financial crash happened, the banks were bailed out by the taxpayer. That is you and me. Did the banks help us when Liz Truss crashed the economy? No, they increased your interest rates to like 10, 11%. And when people were struggling, they really did not give a flying F about it. So again, until we realize, exactly to your point, love, I would love the idea that we're free. We're not free. We're not free. Like, if you and I talk about, if we get on the radar of the Zionists, the extreme ones, our career potentially could be harmed. Like our reputations could be harmed. We could be branded anti-Semitic. Like, if the far right get a hold of us, our lives could be unsafe. We even, like, say for example, great example actually. Tomorrow, Fabian and I were going to go to a talk with Mehdi Hassan, which we booked months ago because we were really looking forward to it. And then yesterday they sent an email out saying that they're going to be performing security checks. So you can't carry anything larger than a handbag the size of an A4 sheet of paper, which is, I mean, this is the Byline Times, but, to your point, it's basically this size, which is pretty tricky given that, my Mac is just about that size, but any vessel that I carry my Mac in is going to be bigger than that. So basically, for a lot of us that are coming straight from work, we can't go. I literally can't go now because I'm like, I genuinely don't know what do I do with like my laptop and stuff that I don't have a cupboard at work. But the main point is, it has his security had to be increased because of what happened with Cenk and Paiga this week, because of the far right riots in Southampton this week, because of all of the vitriol and the lies that are coming out of Musk and Farage and these guys, because Mehdi is Muslim. He's been a vocal critic of the genocide being committed by Israel. Is that why? Like, he's a journalist, a very lifelong, very well qualified journalist. Is that what this has come to now?
Yeah. And it's almost a good thing that we're talking about it, because I think there are quite a few people who, like you say, are outspoken or have a passion around specific causes, and often it results in, threats being made on their lives. I remember David Olusoka talking
Yes.
about it, and I was shocked because, I think he's obviously been on TV a few times. He's got a number of books, and so if you're interested in the sort of things he talks about, he's recognizable. I didn't think he was at level where he would need a bodyguard, and I was like, whoa, like I don't even. Maybe he said something controversial, I missed it, but I don't think he has said anything particularly controversial,
It was just Black History, love. That's
right?
all. Just
Like,
during the.
wait, but
That's
that's what
literally
I'm
what it
saying.
is.
Is that controversial?
No. No, but it's the imperial. It's like reckoning with these British people, reckoning with our imperial history. So what he's doing is trying to unpick and just really reflect the kind of truth of it. And as I understand it, he is reflecting that in our country today, we believe that Black people were only here from the 1960s, but actually you can go much, 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 much further back. And he's evidencing that because he's a historian.
What he does.
It's his job. I don't know what to
And it was
say.
that. Obviously, there was all the sort of uproar over Cheddar Man. Do you remember Cheddar Man? So, so there was this archaeological discovery of these bones, and they were given to someone or to a university that could do some sort of, I don't know, testing to sort of discover more about the person. And it turns out that this person who, existed in ancient Britain had blue eyes, dark hair, and skin more similar to mine than to Nigel Farage's. And so they were sort of saying that, the first Britons were black. So you can imagine people lost their. I'm gonna have to add this part. I'm definitely gonna find it. I don't know if it's been discredited since. I feel like someone. I think it got. I think the people that sort of released the news had to sort of like dial it down a little bit because so many people were so upset by it. And it's like, okay, guys, do you know how many times Britain has been invaded by different people? Like it's an island. It's really hard to defend an island. Okay. France have been here, like the Germans have been here, like all number of people have been here. Like, who do you think William the Conqueror was? He wasn't not a British guy. It was William, So I mean, even sorry, I shouldn't do French accents. Apologies. Any French listeners, I'm sorry. But like, you know, at one point, I can't remember, and again, I need to get this right, and so I will try and fact check this and add it later. But at one point, I think King Albert and his cousins were from three different nations, or were like royalty in three different nations. So it was like Albert in England, one in Russia, and I think there was like a Greek king, and they're all like related. They're all cousins, and so it's like the royal family that we have in Britain wasn't even British. It was just it was just the family that took over from the previous family. So again, like we need to relax over this whole thing of identity. Ultimately, whether you like it or not, we are all humans. We're one species. And guess what? Humans have been able to travel for a long time, not just by foot. Like we've had boats. We get around, okay?
Exactly, love. Exactly. And isn't what's his name? The patron saint of England, George. Isn't he Turkish or something?
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah.
So again, and the thing that always used to blow my mind, because even when we had these discussions when we were doing all the kind of I&D stuff, is the thing that always blows my mind is the reason that I'm this shade of brown and you're that shade of brown is because we have slightly different levels of melanin in our skin, right? Again, dependent on your exposure to the sun. So your body protects yourself by the melanin protects your skin against the sunlight and the rays effectively. That is it. That's literally
Yeah.
it. Like, that's all it
Like we're not different. It's superficial. Like it's environmental factors that have changed the way I look compared to the way you look compared to the way anybody else. But it's just historic, ancestral environmental factors. That's it. Okay.
they're saying, look, for us as well, like in say like 100, so like with our kids and our grandkids and our great grands, etc. Because we're born and raised in England, which obviously climate change notwithstanding, we would not have the same level of exposure to the sun. They actually think we're going to start to lose our melanin as we go through generation by generation. So actually our skin tone is probably going to change as well, which would be just fascinating. Because again, it's just adapt, isn't it? The body just adapts to what it needs.
No,
So
just so you know, I'm going to be black in every lifetime. Okay. Like, this is me now. I'm good. But you know, I saw and I wish I could remember the scientist's name, and so I'll add it later. But there was a scientist who was explaining that um part of what makes melanin so important is that not only does it like protect you from the harmful aspects of the sun's rays, but more specifically, it dissipates radiation. And the reason why this is interesting is because they did a study around the frogs in the area around Chernobyl. So obviously, the nuclear radiation from that have resulted in frogs with higher level of melanin being able to survive more than frogs with low level of melanin. So essentially, the closer you are to Chernobyl, the darker the frogs are. And as you move away from it, they become more pale. So you've got this weird thing where you've got like near black frogs in Chernobyl, and then
that
as
is
you go out.
wild.
And it's the same thing. It's literally the same thing as the sun being like stronger across the equator. And so it's just nature.
That's why when people argue, so there's an argument, I said, there's always a discussion about Christ as well, because Christ was born in what we now know as East Jerusalem, which is slap bang in the middle, effectively, of Earth, very close to the equator. So how he could have been and survived being that pale sort of makes no sense, because actually it would have been quite dangerous for him, right? Because he doesn't have that melanin protection. But again, this is where, isn't it, love, when we talk about race as a social construct, this is what we mean, right? So like when slavery, the transatlantic slave trade happened, it's not like slavery hadn't existed. So again, there's always been class forever, right? Like there were always slaves. I think you'd mentioned it before. Slave came from the term Slavic, which was an Eastern European word. It was just that in order to justify kidnapping and enslaving Africans, they had to come up with this idea that color was inferior. So therefore it was okay to do it because black people and brown people were inferior. So actually that it didn't really matter. And actually, you know, technically there's something maybe somewhere they found in the Bible that was like, yeah, it's actually okay. That's all we mean. Like, it's complete nonsense. It's just made up, people. It doesn't mean anything. It's complete nonsense. And again, it's not the reason why your life is difficult. You're right. Your life is difficult, which is going full circle, because you've got these multimillionaires and billionaires that just are like, and the thing I think with Musk is he's like a Bond villain, and he kind of just sits there and be like, ha 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 ha, look what I've done. I've instigated British people to turn on other British people and destroy Southampton because I'm the puppet and you guys are a bunch of plebs and you're just going to listen to whatever shit I tell you. Ha ha ha, look what I've done. Look how clever I am. And you don't need to believe me, guys. You can look up how Peter Thiel and Alex Karp talk about humanity, or Elon Musk. They have zero love or respect for human beings or humanity or human race. Listen to what they say. And it just, like we were just talking about earlier, love. I said Trump and corruption, and you said which one, which is probably fair. But the article that will flash up is what Robert Reich shared this week. So I think they're called Public Justice or something in America. And they have uncovered that at least half of the donors that contributed to President Trump's White House expansion have benefited from increased or new government contracts worth about $50 billion, and or if they were under federal indictment, that has just now disappeared.
Yeah. Nice that, right? Just turn up with, a bag of money and all your problems go away.
This is what I mean. The super rich, love, the 0.1%. They're just laughing at the rest of us because they've convinced us that people right down at the bottom of the problem. And they are just laughing at us. They live in a sphere that is not our sphere. They exist in a world that's not our world. And I think that until people fundamentally understand that billionaires shouldn't exist, multimillionaires honestly shouldn't exist. And even when they do think they'll threaten, like, oh, but then I'll just stop investing at X or investing at Y. Yeah, sure, fine. Do it. I mean, it's not like you do anything today anyway, to be honest, because you got M&S chief complaining about the minimum wage, but he's not complaining about the minimum wage because M&S are losing money. They're still making profit. It's just they're not making as much profit as they did last year.
And this is the problem, right? All these people are only concerned about their own wealth. And I guess, like, Elon Musk is telling you he doesn't care about humans. He's literally trying to move to Mars. Do you know what I mean? Like, he's got no concern with the rest of you being down here when his concern is like building a colony on an entirely different planet. He doesn't want to be around you. He doesn't want to be associated with this planet. So look, this is not the guy you should be backing. Like, he doesn't like you, got no interest in you, got no care for you. He just wants to make himself as wealthy as possible.
And if you think about the con that you mentioned earlier, right? Like the con, which is not even a conspiracy, it's just what happens. You see all of these investors, right? The reason that we have private equity funds and hedge funds and stockbrokers and all these guys is because individuals have so much money, companies have so much money. They want to make sure the money earns more money, right? And to be fair, we're all invested technically because we're all in a pension fund. We may have savings that are tied to the stock market, whatever it is. But fundamentally, as Fabian explained earlier, I always think this is just a very long con because people are going to buy into SpaceX's IPO, notwithstanding the corruption with the pension funds, which incidentally was what the Malaysian government did when they bought Battersea Power Station, but that's a separate thing. Not least the corruption with the pension fund, but also because they know, like all of the analysts and investors, they know that it's just one big pyramid scheme, right? Like they're all buying from each other. He's buying the Cybertrucks to prop up Tesla and prop up there, and then the other one's borrowing money to this one, and then this one's buying chips from Nvidia. They're fitting it in racks in Dell, and then Oracle is then funding like that whole thing is a conspiracy. It's going to burst at some point, but it may not, because to the Fabian's thing about exploitation and free, we're not free, is because every time we use AI, every time we use Instagram or TikTok or whatever, they're using our interactions, our questions, our data to train their AI models for free. But we will never see the benefit from that because it's all private ownership. So there's going to be a handful of individuals, just like there are now, that are going to run the world.
And this is a scary thing. I think, you know, we spoke about earlier that it doesn't seem to be any way for it to be stopped. Like the way that people are just behaving with such complete impunity. It's not even veiled anymore. It's not even like trying to do it in back alleys behind doors. It's in front of our faces in the daylight, and it's almost like we know you guys don't have power, and we want you to believe that you don't have power. Like we feel like we have all the power, but we need to just make sure that you know we have all the power, and so we're going to do it right in your face. And then thankfully, I don't know if you saw the protests in Albania. Have you seen those? So
Oh, yes, of the ridiculous island.
there's this, I think, Ivanka Trump and Jared Kushner, is that her husband? wanted to build some sort of golf course. There was this story of how they were sailing and they went for a swim and then they went for a barefoot hike and they were like, oh, this is a beautiful island. We should definitely do something here. And all of Albania said, hell no, you're not doing this over there. This isn't your island to play on. Like, this is ours. And like, I think that's what it's going to be necessary, right? It needs to be that level of revolt. And I mean, I don't know. Again, you take everything you see on social media with a pinch of salt. But the number of people who are participating in the protest and the march, like, well done to Albania. Like I know very little about Albania, so I don't know if they're right wing, left wing, or whatever. But it feels like the people have sort of spoken in one clear voice, like, no, get off our island.
But then how did they even get there, right? Because I'm guessing the government sold it. Because I think it's protected land, I read as well. Like it's a protected land, or there's some kind of environmental considerations or something, which is also why people are so angry about it. But like this all goes back to like maybe right at the beginning, which is the government would have had to have sold it, right? Because the government needs money, or one of their interests had said, you need to sell this to them. Given the level of corruption within Trump and his family and the US presidency right now, I also don't know if there was any pressure applied. Honestly, it wouldn't surprise me, to be honest, given what we now know with other countries. Um, but again, there's that disconnect, isn't there, love, between the people and the governments? Because we were talking about Mamdani earlier before we started the podcast. And I think what Mamdani is showing, again, just on a smaller scale, to be fair, in New York, right, is that when you're not owned by individuals and corporate interests, your role is just there to support the people of your community that you're there to represent. When you are owned by corporate interests, and I don't know if we'll flash this up actually, the recent Guardian article showed the level of donations across the UK political parties. Reform is miles ahead at about 15 million. And that's come from two people, by the way. That's just from Christopher Harborne and Alex Bello, two billionaire individuals that are buying our democracy, buying our country. And then as you go down the rank, obviously the Conservatives are next, Labour, and then right at the bottom, you've got the Green Party that have got about something like £290,000 or something in donations. And again, the challenge is people will say, oh, but they just gave it to him. Again, respectfully, I don't think you really understand rich people. Rich people don't give anything away for nothing. That's why they go and uproot their lives to other countries so they don't have to pay taxes in the UK. So these guys don't live in the UK, they don't pay taxes in the UK, but they want to somehow influence what's happening in our country on a day-to-day basis. That should be raising alarm bells for you. And if it isn't, I implore you to look in the mirror and ask yourself, like, what am I missing here? Genuinely, like, you should be bloody concerned that people that don't live here, that don't care about it, are gifting all this money to this chancer that is Farage, honestly. And again, if you look at the policies as well, by the way, if you look down the rank, we'll show you the chart. The parties that are more for the people, so like Labour, Lib Dems, the Green Party, they're right at the bottom. The top parties that get the most amount of donations, obviously from rich people, are the parties that are on the side of rich people.
Yeah,
Otherwise, why would they give them the money?
yeah, that's crazy.
We'll pick up more stuff next week. But I think if we were to just end this, like, friends, let's discuss that if you are feeling like you are hard done by, it's not because of if you're white, it's not because of your skin color, it's because of your class. And instantly, class affects all of us. So like, whilst racism does exist, the reality is we're kind of all in the same boat, because we're all struggling because the system is weighted against us. So if you're in the working or the middle classes, there's the exploitative capitalist system, which is enriching a handful of people at the expense of you. That affects all of us. And I would encourage you to go seek out some more information about it, whether you want to read, listen to audiobooks or follow podcasts and things. There's lots of really interesting stuff out at the moment. I just saw a book by Gabriel Zuckman who talks about wealth tax. Just saw a book about asset class, which talks about the pervasive impact of private equity. Or even if you want to look at just like, I think Yanis Varoufakis, he talks about techno-feudalism, so the idea that we are so entrenched with this tech. So to Fabian's earlier point, we should fight back. But the difficulty that we all face, including Fabian and I, and we joke about this, we're still using Instagram to distribute our platform. We're still having to use Google to live our life, to get around within directions, etc., etc. So when it becomes so entrenched in your life, including my iPhone, how do you break from it? So again, that's another interesting book to read. I've just nearly finished Cuckoo Land by Tom Burgess, which talks about corruption and influence in British politics. I would encourage you to go have a look or read or find something about that, because that's super, super interesting. But yeah, and we'll end, I don't know what you think, Brav. Any good stuff on your side?
Well, I was going to say, like, look, if you're listening to this and you've gotten to this part of the podcast, and maybe you're really into podcasts, and a lot of the people that Mira have mentioned probably have been on podcasts to support their book, to support the release of their book. So, if reading isn't your thing, and I get it, not everybody wants to like have their hardback out and go through page after page, and would rather passively listen to a conversation whilst they're on the commute to work. That's also okay. If that's how you actually consume and retain information, then, look at some of the names that Mira's mentioned, see if they've appeared on a podcast, just have a listen to what they said, and, maybe that will lead to you reading the book in the future. But if all you do is like listen to some of their hot takes, then maybe that's an entry point, and, you know, entering is the beginning of something, which sounds weird now that I've said it out loud, but you know what I mean.
I know what you mean. I know what you mean, love. I know what you mean. Yeah. And one thing as well, which this is a little bit of a random thing. So, like, I don't know if you know about, this woman who had sex with like 100 and something people on one day or something. I just came across again, so just flicking through my feed, and she was doing an interview with somebody or other. And it was so gross. To be honest, again, I can't fact check this, guys. I don't want to, so please do it yourself. But it was so gross, I kind of had to just I quickly went past it. But the snippet that I got was essentially she's pregnant, and her baby shower is literally a shower, if you see what I mean. So she's gonna do the same thing again while she's pregnant, or something to that effect, which I was then like, it was really interesting because I always like to read the comments, right, on this kind of stuff. And it was interesting because a number of people that said, it's her body, her choice, which I do agree with, true. But I think the thing that I was talking to Fabian about this week that really struck me is, obviously you can't choose who your parents are. And I would say Fabian and I were really blessed to have parents that taught us to aspire. So aspire to, follow your dream or your passion, like go after what you wanted. So Fabian did 1 degree, changed to one that he was more passionate about, right? He was encouraged. I was encouraged to, I always loved economics and world events and politics. I was encouraged to follow this path, and I moved into finance and all this kind of crap. Aspire. Is it that this woman's mother or parents told her that all she could aspire to do is to be a vessel? That all she could aspire to do was just use her body in this way? Is that all it is? Just like, because I was always struck when I used to watch the Kardashians, and I always vividly remember one very early episode where Kim K was doing a Playboy shoot, and she was just really uncomfortable. And she just felt really uncomfortable. She didn't want to do it. She just wasn't feeling it. And her mother was like, "You're doing it. Get back out there. They've signed. Just go do it. Get out there right now." And I remember watching that, just being like, I know people are going to come after us because everyone loves the Kardashians. But again, this woman, this family, they capitalized on their children's lives, because the Kardashians haven't really done anything except just 24/7 put their lives out there, right? That's it. That's singularly their contribution. Again, catapulted because of a sex tape that was purportedly released, but, who knows? So anyway, I don't know, love, what you think, but it just got me thinking.
I think it's very interesting because I think you sent me the article maybe yesterday, and I, again, I was like, I'm not going to do this now. I'm not going to go through this now. But I did think, like, I wonder if it is maybe less parents and more just patriarchy, and that I don't want to say path of least resistance, but I don't know a better way of framing it. Like I don't I don't doubt that there's effort in what she does, and I think to for anyone,
Sorry,
for anyone who's
no pun
listening,
intended.
Mira is struggling to contain her giggles, and it's
Sorry,
making me laugh. But
sorry.
like, what I'm saying is like, it's that thing of like your how patriarchy values women,
Mm.
unfortunately. And maybe she just saw that for the amount of effort she's willing to put in, she would see a greater return on that doing what she does as opposed to being, you know, someone in finance or someone in marketing or someone in any other profession. And again, I don't like we can't answer this because we're not inside her brain. We have no idea her thought process. But I feel like unfortunately it's like society doesn't value women for their thinking, their thoughts, their intelligence. And there's much greater value for your Kim Kardashians. And again, she has businesses and some of them are successful. So maybe I'm like not appreciating her business acumen, but I don't imagine that if all she had was business acumen, that she would have the business success that she has today. So there's this uncomfortable truth, maybe. I mean, tell me if I'm wrong, please.
No, I don't. It's a good point, actually. Yeah, I suppose there's always the internalized misogyny in a patriarchy. The reality is, I mean, from what I read, I think the last time this whole thing blew up was she made like £1 million or something crazy. So you're absolutely right. She ain't gonna make that money in bloody finance or marketing for sure. And again, to your point, if Kim K had set up a makeup line first, would that have been as successful if she hadn't started by Playboy, sex tapes, sharing her life quite openly, etc., and then doing this? So yeah, it's a fair point actually, and I guess it just yeah, you're right. I guess it shows the power of the patriarchy or the value ascribed to it. Yeah, it's a fair point. Yeah, interesting. So yeah, it just kind of struck me. It was just like, and then there was a lot of debate around the kid.
What life is that, man?
What life is that kid gonna have? Yeah, that's what I find quite sad and scary. In some ways, again, I don't want to, again, it's very unfair to judge because I don't know this young woman. I'm just seeing obviously what's happening. She's a beautiful, beautiful girl as well. Like, I just feel like, couldn't she have done something different? Is this the path that she maybe wants to take with a kid on the way, or at least even while she's pregnant as well, to do that kind of trauma maybe to your body? I'm not sure. Um, and I kind of hope, like, what if she has a daughter as well, love? Like, is that what she's going to aspire for her daughter as well?
Like, is her partner involved at all?
I don't even know who that is, honestly,
I
love.
mean, like, yeah, I'm sure
I'm
we.
sure there is, but I don't know who it is. Because to be fair, I couldn't bring myself after I saw that initial bit to watch the whole thing. It was so gross. So I kind of quickly, and I've said not interested, so it doesn't show me anymore. But like, yeah, I don't know, gross. But anyway, so yeah, sorry to end on that very strange note, but I just was like, I saw this as like, that's gonna, the strange one. But anyway, so listen, friends, it's been a great episode. Thank you for bearing with us because, as we said at the beginning, we were quite busy this week, so we didn't have as much time to dig in as we normally would. But yeah, we hope you enjoyed listening, and yeah, engage with the comments. What do you think, Fabs?
Yes. Engage with the comments. We love the comments. Good or bad, negative or positive, critical or praising. Let us know what you think, and we will see you next time.
See you next time.
Bye, guys.